I wanted to talk to the governor about TSA, that Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program offered by FEMA, and the governor has agreed to join us this afternoon from Puerto Rico. Governor, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, David.
Let me ask you about TSA. That program would allow people, Puerto Ricans who can prove that they've been affected by the storm, to get shelter at a hotel. FEMA told me that your office did not request TSA. Why is that?
We did. We requested guidance within a whole host of programs that are for temporary shelter and for permanent shelter as well. So we sent FEMA a letter asking guidance within the TSA as well as the 408 STEP program and others, so that we can implement them as quickly as possible.
When did you send that letter?
It wasn't me per se. It was our OMB officer. I think it was sent sometime last week.
Last week. Okay. So what took 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks, to send that letter? You there, Governor?
I can't hear you, David.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yes.
Okay. What took 30 plus days to send that letter?
Well, we were looking for all of the alternatives that were for housing, and some of those we discussed on them. There were some obviously obstacles in the pathway towards getting to them. That's why we sent an official letter asking for guidance and for Puerto Ricans to have access to all of those particular programs for housing.
What were some of the obstacles?
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, sir. What were some of the obstacles? You said that there were obstacles that delayed the request of TSA. What were those obstacles?
Right. So when we're discussing, apparently some programs can be utilized in some ways. When you implement some programs, you can't use others, and so forth. So we wanted to get a full scope of what were the alternatives for all of us here in Puerto Rico, based on all the housing programs that they had. So that's why instead of going after each and one of them independently, we sort of asked for guidance within all of those programs so that we can corral all of them and maximize the best programs for Puerto Ricans.
So, Governor, a lot of people have come to me and said, it's frustrating that it's taken 30 days for the government to sort of make this request, because TSA, for example, would allow people to go to hotels immediately, right? So I'm sure you can appreciate that frustration of, like, for example, right after Harvey in Houston and Irma in Florida, people were able to get to hotels almost instantly.
Right. So here's how the narrative went. In the onset, when we asked about the program, they were looking at hotels only here in the island, and there were no hotels available for that. And a little bit later, there were 2 hotels that were available to include the U.S. citizens of Puerto Rico. And then, after the conversations continued, there was a broader scope that this could be utilized in different areas. And that's why we, at that juncture, immediately asked for guidance.
Let me ask you this. Where could it be utilized on the island? Because just from my experience of being there, you don't have the same number as hotels as, let's say, Houston does or Miami does, right? So where could it be utilized and people could be put in shelter hotels right away? Where on the island?
Well, if the program is used, there were at least from last week, there were 20 hotels that have gone up to standard in Puerto Rico that might be used for those. Again, that's preliminary conversations that we've had. So right now, I don't know where the number stands, but of course, the potential will be to use them temporarily in other states as well.
Do you know, and I'm going to get to that question because that's an important follow-up, but do you know, of those 20 hotel rooms on the island, how many rooms, how many people could be housed there, sir?
No, I don't have the information on that.
Okay.
But certainly it is my view that if that is part of the the sheltering program. So here's the consideration, David. There are several sheltering programs, several housing programs, and at the onset when we were looking at that one, it seemed like if it was only to be used in the island, it was very much insufficient. Of course, when you expand it to other states, there might be some opportunities for temporary housing, but certainly in Puerto Rico, whether it was 2 hotels or 20, it still seems like a significantly low number.
Well, and Governor, the real request is coming from your citizens who are on the mainland, who've evacuated to Florida or other states and want to know if they can stay in hotels there. I have, for the last 72 hours, been in communication with FEMA to try and get some guidance on what would happen if you were to make that request. Now you're confirming for us that you have made that request. So my question to FEMA was, does that then mean that a Puerto Rican staying in New York City or Miami or Fort Lauderdale can stay in a hotel? And I want to read you the response that I got before I ask a follow-up question. So for those of you watching, here is the response that FEMA gave me as of Monday, a couple of hours before our interview with the governor. They said this: TSA is funded under Section 403 of the Stafford Act and is subject to a state cost share. The state may request that FEMA authorize the use of TSA for the declared disaster in specific geographic areas. But there are many, many factors that go into these kinds of decisions. No state should make these decisions lightly. It would be irresponsible for us to speculate on the outcome of an application that has not been submitted in a program that hasn't been activated. That's government speak for basically saying the governor hasn't made the request, and so until he does, we can't really answer much of your questions. Now, Governor, you're telling me you've made the request. Have you been told how quickly you might get an answer as to whether your citizens staying on the mainland will be able to move into a hotel?
No, we made, as I said, we made the request last week with our own OMB officer. So I will certainly check again where that petition stands. Of course, it was a broader petition that included the TSA and other programs as well.
What other programs are being utilized right in the 30 days after Maria? Are there any sheltering programs that you're aware of where plans have been made to put people in temporary housing?
From FEMA, do you mean?
From anybody, yeah, FEMA or anybody else.
Well, from the temporary housing, of course, the shelter program that we have right now is the one that we established in Puerto Rico.
Right.
So no other program, no other sheltering program has or housing program has still yet to be approved. But we still haven't been approved for the permanent work, and the cost sharing agreement between that permanent work. So those are some of the considerations that are taken into effect.
So just so everybody's understanding, what the governor's saying is that basically the sheltering that has been offered to people has been shelters on the island that were set up ahead of the storm and were activated and are still being used today. There are still thousands of people who are staying in, it's less than 8,000, but there are still thousands of people who are staying in shelters across Puerto Rico. Governor, a lot of people will be happy to hear that request was finally made because, I was getting blasted with messages from people asking what the heck has taken so long to make this request.
Right, well, we made the request. And hopefully we can move on this and other issues that are important for Puerto Rico so that we can get back into the recovery phase.
Governor, let's move on to another topic. I won't take too much of your